Welcome, everyone. My name is Maureen Meredith. I am the Plan Amendment Planner for the City of Austin in the Housing and Planning Department. Tonight, we will discuss NPA 2020-0025.01. So as you know, this is in the Oak Hill Combined Neighborhood Planning Area in the West Oak Hill area. It is the case number NPA 2020-0025.01. Again, I am Maureen Meredith. Next, we'll introduce Mark Walters. Then we'll go to Alice Glasgow, the agent. Then we'll introduce Brandon and then go to Julie Montgomery. She is Paige Ellis's policy advisor. If everyone can just introduce themselves, then we'll go from there.
Good evening. I'm Mark Walters, Principal Planner with the Housing and Planning Department, and I'll be moderating tonight's discussion.
Well, I'm Alice Glasgow, and I'm representing Brandon Brightson for the rezoning at 7815 Thomas Springs Road.
And I am Brandon Brightson, owner of 7815 Thomas Springs Road.
I'm Cheryl Grossman. I live on Weir Loop and part of the affected 500 feet.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Montgomery. I am Councilmember Ellis's policy director. She had a conflict with a different District 8 meeting tonight, and so I'm here to listen and learn, and I will relay information back to her. Thanks all for being here tonight.
Okay. So we will go to the next slide. As I said, my name is Maureen Meredith. Here is my contact information. Kate Clark is the zoning planner, and there is her contact information as well. This information will be also on the last slide if you wanted to write that down either now or later on. The agenda tonight, I'll go over the case information in a little more detail. I'll present the guidelines for the group discussion. I'll go over how to participate in the process, why there is a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. Then Alice Glasgow will go into her presentation. Then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. So the property address is 7815 Thomas Springs Road. It's 6.4 acres. Case number NPA 2020-0025.01. Project name is Thomas Springs Office Warehouse. The FLUM request is to change the future land use map from rural residential to commercial. The associated zoning case number is C14 2020-0102. The request is to change the zoning from rural residential neighborhood plan to warehouse limited office neighborhood plan for an office warehouse. And here we have the property owner and applicant, Brandon Brightson, and the agent is Alice Glasgow, who you met earlier. Guidelines for discussion, and these are guidelines that we present with all the neighborhood plan amendment virtual community meetings that we have. Due to the need for social distancing, in-person questions and comments have been moved to this online format. Everyone will be allowed to speak. We ask that you listen respectfully and actively. Please criticize ideas, not individuals. Commit to learning, not debating. Avoid blame, speculation, inflammatory language. Avoid assumptions about others, especially based on their perceived social group. And staff reserves the right to delete offensive language and remove offenders from the meeting. So far, we have had no problems with our virtual meetings. Guidelines for group discussion. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat box at any time during this meeting. After the staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking the hand symbol in the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then staff will open the floor to questions in the chat or by the attendees raising their hands to speak. If there are similar questions, they may be grouped and answered together. We ask that you mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarification of conversation. And if you're having connection issues, we ask that you turn off your video until you're called upon to ask your question. How to participate in this process. If you have questions after this meeting, you can email to me and/or Kate. We will post the answers to the city website, speakupaustin.org in PA within 5 business days. You can email or call either me or Kate with any questions or comments that you will have. And like I said, they will be posted to the website. Any written comments that you submit, we will add them to case reports that go before Planning Commission and City Council. If you live within 500 feet, you will get a notice date, time of the Planning Commission and City Council public hearings, and it will have instructions on how to participate in the virtual public hearings. So why is there a plan amendment application? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. The city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most neighborhood plan amendments are amendments to the plan's future land use map, and most neighborhood plan amendment applications have an associated zoning application. This map shows in blue the areas that have City Council approved neighborhood plans, most of which have a future land use map that looks like this. This is the Oak Hill future land use map. These colors represent broad land uses. For example, this property is rural residential, which is the pale yellow. Pink is the office land use. Brown is mixed use. Orange is multifamily. Purple industrial, and red is. This application, the request is to change the future land use map from rural residential, which is the pale yellow, to commercial, which is the red color. And these broad land uses in the future land use map are associated with specific zoning districts in order to be in conformance. So with the request to change the future land use map from rural residential, the zoning request has, like, the zoning request for for warehouse limited office would be red, which is the commercial land use. So it would need to be consistent. So this map shows an aerial photo of the property. This is a Google map that just shows some of the surrounding uses of the property on Thomas Springs Road and Circle Drive. This is a close-up of the future land use map that, again, is sort of the pale yellow rural residential. To the southeast, there is the brown with the white dots. That is the neighborhood mixed-use land use. And it looks like that is office, which is the pink. So here's a zoning map. Again, it shows the surrounding zoning on the property. There's some limited office, SF3. P is public. LR is neighborhood commercial. And they have some rural residential and warehouse limited office along Circle Drive. This map shows the property in relation to the Oak Hill Center, which is the activity center designated on the Imagine Austin Growth Concept Map. That is the end of my presentation. Next, we will go into Alice's. I will stop sharing my screen, and Alice will pull up hers.
So folks, here we go. This is the subject site. As you can see, Maureen showed a previous map that showed the site. And of course, the yellow highlight is...
Can you maximize your screen, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you make it bigger?
Can you maximize your screen?
There. Is that?
There it is. Yeah.
Is that better now? Okay. So there you go. There's the property again. Maureen just walked through. Can you see this better now? Everyone? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm pointing with the hand here. So here's the site. Some of it is on Tuia Loop Road, Thomas Springs Road. Brandon owns the property right here that is zoned LONP. That's his office. So he offices right there at LONP. He owns that office building. He owns this SF3NP property. There's nothing on it. It's a vacant lot. So he is a community landowner. He may not live here, but he is part of the business community, if you will, that he does own land, the yellow, the LONP, and the SF3 property. So I'm just going to go over some of the information, maybe repetitive, that Maureen spoke to, but probably not. So the current future land use map has our site as rural residential. Our proposed change to the future land use map is to commercial, because that's what the city code calls the color for the use we're seeking of the zoning. So the current zoning is rural residence district. The proposed zoning request is WLO, the warehouse limited office. Our justification for the change to the plan, neighborhood plan and rezoning are as follows. Number one, the proposed change to the future land use map and associated rezoning are consistent with the surrounding land use pattern. Since the property is subject to the Save Our Springs ordinance, impervious cover for this site is limited to 25%, which means that 75% of the site, I'm sorry, 70% of the 75% of the site is limited to going to be open space. Given the low impervious cover under the SOS, office WLO zoning district is compatible from a density with the SOS ordinance, because the WLO zoning also restricts the amount of square footage that can be achieved on a site to 0.25, another 25% limitation on square footage. So you have an impervious cover limitation, how much you can pave the site, and how much square footage you are allowed on the site. It does not guarantee that just because it allows you a certain amount that you can achieve that. So you have those other limitations that restrict how much one can build. And I'll build onto that some more. Goal number 2, the neighborhood plan has several goals. And goal number 6B speaks to a balanced development and environmental protection, and calls for maintaining a vibrant residential and commercial community that demonstrates caring stewardship of the environment. Land use goal number 6.C of the Oak Hill Neighborhood Plan states that create a mix of uses in existing corridors of commercial development that will provide a diversity of local services convenient to neighborhoods and establish commercial nodes at strategic locations. Goal number 6.E is to encourage locally owned businesses to locate in the Oak Hill area and find ways for local businesses and employers to prosper. There are key principles associated with these goals, and the 2 of them are 6.B1 is to encourage zoning to be compatible with existing and neighborhood land uses and seek optimal and most appropriate use of land. 6E.1 is Oak Hill stakeholders desire more small-scale businesses with less strict commercial establishments. WLO zoning is the most restrictive zoning district in the City of Austin Land Development Code, and I'll show you why. So these are additional restrictions under the WLO zoning. So these requirements are that the building must include an office use, and the minimum floor area for the office use is the lesser of 20% or 1,000 square feet. A truck loading dock may not be located on the same building face as the office entrance. An office use must face a street that provides primary access. A construction sales service use may not exceed 10,000 square feet of gross floor area. The Land Use Commission may, at the request of a developer, ask for modifications to these regulations. Some of the 3 regulations that one could seek to reduce the minimum lot area from 1 acre to a half acre. You can increase the height from 25 feet to 35 feet, or the floor area ratio. But those are aspects that just spelled out that should someone need those, that there has to be a process that requires a public hearing before the Planning Commission. These are just rules I'm sharing with you that pertain to these rules. I just copied them from the city code, so you'd have them because not many people know that they exist, but they are there. Anyhow, so back to the city's site development regulations. Every zoning district tells you what your minimum land area should be. It tells you what your lot width should be, your maximum density, your height, and our property is zoned RR, rural residence. The minimum lot size is 1 acre. The maximum height is 35 feet. If you look at all these zoning districts under residential from LA, Lake Austin, all the way to MF6, there is a height limit, and you go from the residential 35 feet and above. I move on to the commercial districts. So they start off with NO, neighborhood office. The height is 2 stories or 35 feet. Moving into the middle, WLO is the most restrictive commercial zoning district for given this entire chart, residential and commercial. You see the minimum site area is the same as rural residential and Lake Austin. Your height limit under rural residential is 35 feet. Your maximum height under WLO is 25 feet or 1 story. There is nowhere else on this chart where you can see a height of 25 feet or 1 story. And there is the floor to area ratio, the amount of square footage you allowed on your site maximum. Again, the same thing here. You can look here, the commercial recreation is the other district that has a low floor to area ratio, but it does not have the same height limit. So those are the restrictions under WLO. So this is the City of Austin's summary of permitted uses, conditional uses that are a summary from the city code. Under WLO, the P stands for permitted. You can see the permitted uses compared to other districts. Under commercial uses, WLO, very few P, under I've highlighted the yellow, P uses. You have here an art gallery, you can have an art workshop, and then nothing else is permitted. The next use is building maintenance services, and then a conditional use for a business or trade school requires special approval from the Planning Commission. And then all the other P's are very few here. I'm just scrolling through so you can see how it stacks up in comparison use-wise from the other commercial zoning districts. And then Mark, if you could go ahead and pull up the other exhibit I just sent you, the picture with the warehouse.
I'll give it another shot, see what happens. There it is.
Okay, I'll put it from my side, so I guess something is working from my end. So this is a photograph of the Presidio office warehouse building that is located at 8651 Old Bee Caves Road. It's obviously, it was just completed. And so you can see what the rules require, that your primary access is onto, in this case, onto Old Bee Caves Road. It looks like an office building. And then of course in the back is your warehouse. So this is an example of what Brandon contemplates to have. It may not be designed exactly this way. His architect will probably, every architect comes up with a design that is appropriate to the client's needs. The office warehouse is what this property is also zoned WLO, just so you know that. So that concludes my presentation, and I will stop here and answer questions, if any, or have Brandon say something so he can introduce himself and to his neighbors for those who have not met him.
Maureen, you're going to need to request control back, I think. Okay, now we're looking at, okay. Well, thanks, Alice, Maureen. So nobody's typed anything in the chat, but if anybody has any questions, they could click the raise your hand icon located at the top portion of the screen, and we can start the Q&A portion of tonight's meeting. We have Peter Vigliano has a question. Peter, would you unmute yourself and go ahead?
Well, I guess I think I'm going to hold my responses. I'd love to hear what my other neighbors have to say. Honestly, I just want to sort of break the ice and get things going. But I know there's several neighbors of mine on Weir Loop that have grave concerns about this, and so I'm just hoping they'll speak up. But if not, then I'm ready to talk. But I'm going to go to mute again just to see if somebody else wants to say something first.
We have a question from E. Mellish. You just unmute yourself until you're unmuted and ask your question. E. Mellish, that's all I have to go by. I don't know if it's a, well.
Yeah, that's Eric. Eric, do you have a question?
It's not. Okay. Next, we'll go to, hold on. I'm going to see if.
Wonder if he's muted. Eric, are you muted?
I'm going to try to unmute him. Okay, Eric Mellish, you're unmuted. Do you have a question? Well, let's go. We'll circle back to Eric. And Cheryl Grossman, can you unmute yourself? And can you please, Cheryl, if you'd like to ask a question, you need to unmute, please. Okay. So, Peter, I see. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Maybe there's some issues with the communications. I've had some on my end, but in any event,
Eric got kicked off.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I've spoken with almost all of virtually all my neighbors up and down the road. And the first thing I think I want to say is that Weir Loop Road is a very short, dead end road that's narrow. It is occupied by, I would say, virtually all of us are over 65, or certainly the vast majority of us are. And some have been here like Cheryl, and I think Gene over 40 years. So this is an old community, in the sense that it's kind of been safe harbor for many years for a lot of people. So the concerns that I have, and I'll just speak for myself, is that any development, period, on Weir Loop Road would be a detriment to our environment, to our property values, and certainly to our safety. And a lot of younger folks don't understand that your reactions get slower as you get older, and with increased traffic, certainly truck traffic, it becomes a bit more hazardous. So I do want to say that we have zero desire for the property that faces Weir Loop Road to become anything, to change, to stay rural residential, which would mean that if the property facing Thomas Road was commercial, and then of course Brandon would have to subdivide and to maintain the rural residential on Thomas Springs, that I guess about a 2-acre tract. That would be certainly in the best interest of all of us that are on Weir Loop Road. Then the other thing I'd like to say is that in terms of the remaining acreage, or all of it in general, at our meeting in Brandon a few weeks ago, or a business, Brandon said he was a home builder and is interested, of course, in maintaining a nice environment, you might say, for us. But I would just propose that as a home builder, the 6.5 acres, you could build 4 to 6 really nice homes that would certainly benefit our community and neighborhood, and could certainly be profitable as for a home builder right now as things are going. Whereas any type of commercial construction is going to bring in a lot more traffic, certainly more trucks, particularly larger trucks. And my belief is that it hurts our property value because it's just an example of commercialization beyond just the mom and pop businesses that we have now on Thomas Springs Road. And there's a domino effect that can happen with this kind of development, and I think that's a big concern for me, that there are a number of large tracts on that are in the city of Austin that could then just commercialize this corridor beyond anything we recognize now. So my comments are as rural residential, and minimize any type of commercialization on this property. And I still think it's a profitable way to go as a business person. And I really welcome my neighbors to speak up. And I hope I'm adding a little bit of value to this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Cheryl Grossman has her hand up, but her microphone is muted. So if you would just click the little microphone looking icon next to the camera, we'll be able to hear you. Well, while we're waiting to see if Cheryl, okay, Eric Mellish is back. He was able to, could you unmute
Can you
yourself?
hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so I have very similar concerns to Peter. I worry about traffic on a road that is not acceptable for a road, and I worry about commercial traffic coming on our road that we live on. I hear, places, the docks, loading docks, that makes me think of semi trucks. I don't know there's a place on Thomas Springs Road that a semi truck can turn around. Don't they need 65 feet to be able to do that? Where can all that happen? That means if they have no place to turn around, that means they're backing out into the road, in a road that's already heavily trafficked by trucks that aren't supposed to use it. Those are some big concerns. Anytime you talk about bringing commercial industry into a residential neighborhood, it always brings concerns, and not so much the gentrifying of the neighborhood, but the changing of the neighborhood that I've lived in for 22 years. And I think Cheryl's probably lived here longer than that. And I know Gene Perkins certainly has, and Mr. Jenigan certainly has. And so that's my 2 cents worth.
Well, thanks. Justin Mortimer has your hand. You have your hand raised. If you'd unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks. We turned our camera on. Here we are with my wife and I. Justin Mortimer, my wife Haley.
Hi, how are you?
We don't really have a question, but we did want to just build on a little bit of the comments already shared. And we've certainly been a newcomer into the community, having only been here a few years, but we're looking forward to being here for a number of years into the future. One thing we've definitely observed is some commercialization on Thomas Springs Road, and we don't have an issue with the commercialization on Thomas Springs Road, but what we do want to be cautious with, and one thing that we are concerned about with having two young children, is the Ware Loop Road. Similar to Eric, in addition to what Peter mentioned in terms of the development on Ware Loop Road, what we would really like to see is that all commercial access is restricted, prohibited from Ware Loop Road. In addition, we would also like to see that there's no development on Ware Loop Road, so that in that case we can preserve the rural integrity of that side road off of the main Thomas Springs Road tributary, and that way we can really ensure that our children's safety on that side road is protected. Anything else?
Yeah, I think it's just, that's the saving grace, being a resident on the main frontage. We see lots of cars and trucks going down every day. It's a major through traffic road at this point, and our only saving grace is Weir Loop Road. So we understand the commercialization makes sense on Thomas Springs, but the integrity of our rural community, Weir Loop Road, is massively important to us. It's where we can spend time as a family, spend time getting to know our neighbors. And so we would like to preserve the integrity of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Cheryl, you can unmute. Maureen, can you see if you can unmute her? I don't have permissions to do so. Well, we're going to figure this out. Does anybody else have any questions? Any of the people who phoned in have questions? I see
we have a phone, we've phoned in, can you hear us?
Yes, do you end your last four digits 3988?
Yes.
Okay, yes, can you please identify yourself and ask your question, please?
Okay, well, we are Rebecca and Marvin Dykehouse, and we live at the very end, of Weir Loop, and we just wanted to kind of echo everything that all our neighbors have said. We feel very concerned about trucks, for one thing, just going down Thomas Springs Road, where they're technically not supposed to be unless they're doing business. But it's just, the road is too small. Our street has actually been termed as like almost like a lane. When there are two cars coming down, one of the cars has to pull to the side to let another car pass. The road is that narrow. And so there's really no room for large, vehicles if it were to come to that. Like Eric echoed, that if a truck had to turn around, and like Haley said, she's counted how many trucks go by and the amount of congestion that all causes. So I think that all of us are on the same page as neighbors with our concern about traffic and truck traffic and noise pollution, because this is a quiet neighborhood. And that's one of the lovely things about our area. Austin's growing all around us, but we still have this little kind of area where it's undeveloped and quiet, and we really value that and would hate to lose that.
Okay, well, thank you. Would the caller whose phone number end with the last four digits 0283, do you have a question or comment?
I believe everything that Eric and Peter are saying. I don't want Thomas Springs Road to end up looking like Burnett Road with all commercial.
And may I ask who's talking, please?
Phyllis Green. I live on Weir Loop Road next to the property that is being rezoned.
Okay.
Or
thank you.
To be rezoned.
Okay, thank you. And with the caller whose last four digits are 0806, do you have a comment or a question? No? Okay. Again, I can't seem to be able to unmute Cheryl Gross.
I can't unmute anybody, it seems, even Cheryl.
Yeah. I don't know. It might have been something in the meeting setup. I can't. Because we spoke with her just a little while ago before the meeting started. Just wondering if she can.
Well, I had to disconnect and come back in. This is Eric. I had to disconnect and come back in before y'all could hear me.
Okay. Maybe, Cheryl, if you log off and log back on the way you got on originally, we might be able to hear you so you can ask your question or make your comment. While we're waiting, does anybody else have? So, Peter, you'd unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just want to say while we're waiting for, just in case Cheryl can't get on, she is, almost right across the street from this property and has lived there for 40 years. And I do know I can speak for her to say that she does not want to see any changes in the zoning of that property. I won't speak for her. There's the barking dog. I won't speak for her on Thomas Springs Road, but I do know that she does not want to see that RR change. And I, anyway, hopefully she'll get on and verify that, but I do know that for a fact, just in case she can't get.
Sorry about that. He was telling the person walking by that it's his sidewalk. So
I could make, this is Becky Dykehouse. Maybe Cheryl could call on the phone like I did and just talk that way. It's easy.
Yeah, by the way, this is Alice. Cheryl did send an email to staff indicating that she prefers the Wheel Loop Road to be rural residential. So we have an email, and the staff has it too. So she has written.
Go ahead, Alice. I'm just saying she logged off, and she's not in. But if she logs back in the next few minutes, we can take her question. So, does anybody else have any comments or questions while we're waiting to see if Mrs. Grossman can sign back in?
Hello.
Yes. Can I ask who's speaking and what's your question or comment?
This is Marvin Dykehouse, husband of Rebecca Dykehouse at 9400 Weir Loop. And what we're worried about is the fact that if that 2-acre section gets rezoned, there's a barking dog. If the 2-acre section gets rezoned RR on Thomas Springs Road, we don't have any reassurance in the future that it won't. And there's been some talk about the owner putting not doing anything that with putting a driveway in or something like that. So there would be, but even if he says he won't do it, well, what's to say that even that after it's been rezoned, that the next person who would own the property would be able to put anything they wanted on there? So is there some kind of writing in the zoning laws or the zoning pertaining to a certain tract or a certain area of something that can be written in that say that would never happen? That's just a question.
So, Alice, do you want to address that, or
Yes.
I think I can do it as well. I mean, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Was the question regarding not allowing commercial access onto Wheel Loop Road that Justin Mortimer just spoke to?
Yes.
Yes, that was the question.
Yeah. Well, Brandon is willing to prohibit access, and of course, Councilmember Paige Ellis's aide is here, so Councilmember Ellis will be on the dais when the case is heard, and we agree that we council should prohibit access to Wheel Loop Road. Then that becomes part of the zoning ordinance, and it's baked into the ordinance, so that if someone wanted to use it, they would have to go through this process again, file a zoning change to remove that restriction, and you'd be able to weigh in. So that's how it gets memorialized.
Okay, Cheryl. Sorry, sir. You wasn't clear.
Can you hear me?
Just a moment. We were.
Yeah. I think somebody else is trying to talk to me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but we ask if the last caller, the speaker, wanted to finish because he kind of broke up. I didn't quite clear, but go ahead, Ms. Grossman, and then we'll follow up with the rest of them.
Okay, I'm not seeing much of anything here.
Well, just ask your question and it'll be recorded.
It's unfortunate that that this is a piece of property that manifests itself as 7850 Thomas Springs Road, but it has frontage on Weir Loop. And none of it, I think, from what I'm gathering, want that part of the tract deemed commercial. And it's not just limiting access. You know, we don't want, and yet the street measures at my house 16.4 feet across. you know, we're used to limited traffic or no traffic at all. There's very little traffic on this road. We don't want to have traffic on this road. So I would just like to see something, I suppose, if we can't limit Weir Loop Road to being rural residential, then not for any of this. I mean, he can do what he wants with 7815 Thomas Springs Road, but not on Weir Loop. I've lived here 43 years, and I relish the quiet and the impact of that being made commercial. Seems like the possibility of more commercial land being developed, and I object to that strongly. And I am within the 500 feet.
Well, I think, Ms. Grossman, while you were logging on and off, having that issue, Ms. Glasgow did say that the property owner was willing to agree to limit vehicular access, to prohibit vehicular access off that road.
But is that different than rural?
I heard that, but that's not adequate. It needs to not be commercial at all.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to go to, do you have any other questions? Because I know you've had a hard time being able to speak before we go on to the next speaker. No?
No, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Would Paula Jennings, would you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
It's not a question. This is Mike Jennings. I'd just like to say that what really defines Weir Loop Road is that there's probably more families, kids, animals, pets that use that road during the day and the evenings than cars do. And that really defines our neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you. Peter, is that an old hand or a new hand? Do you have another question or comment?
No, that's a new hand. So on this issue of no commercial traffic going through the property that faces Weir Loop Road, you know, we had this conversation on Brandon's, the porch of his business, and he said, okay, I would agree to that. And then Alice said at the time, and so maybe we need to clarify this, she goes, but we may not be able to actually determine that. That may be up to the city, that there needs to be routing through that property. And I mean, almost exact words. And I understand, yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I don't know how, Alice, you want to respond to that, but I can tell you, if that, let me finish, wait. If that property is anything but rural residential, then we are vulnerable, because even if the city restricts it, or you say you want to restrict it, it's gonna happen. There's a 43-foot easement between, or property sharing between the two. It's gonna happen, and then once it starts happening, nobody will enforce it. There's no way that that property can be anything but rural residential, because it will not be enforced, just like truck traffic isn't. So I'm just going to say, Alice, I think you're right. I think the city is the one that's going to determine that, and that property needs to be segregated from 7815.
Can I speak now?
Yes, I think he's finished his comment.
So Peter and Mark, stated this, that ultimately the city council makes decisions on all cases. You know, they'll vote, and whatever conditions we agree to, we can agree and say no access. I've handled cases before the city council where with the neighborhood association, we've agreed just last year on West 6th Street, we agreed to prohibit access to an alley, and that's part of the zoning ordinance. So if it's in the ordinance, when a site plan comes in, the city staff will not allow access to it. So that's how it's enforced. It's during the site plan development process where they go to the ordinance that council approved and council prohibited access. Then that's how they enforce it. Now, when I spoke at the meeting last time, I've since then talked to Brandon, obviously, and he as the owner agrees that if that is included with the rezoning, simply to allow him to build, to concentrate the development on the Thomas Springs Road side, then of course he would agree to prohibit access through the zoning ordinance to Thomas Springs Road. And our council member, District 8, your council member, our council member, Aid is on this call and she's taking note, and council member Alice Page will be the council members voting on the zoning case. So she'll be the one, if that's what we want, she'll be the one championing that for us. And for you guys.
Mr. Jennings.
I just wanted to, Mark, do you mind if I just say,
go ahead.
I am here. Hi, yeah, I am here. In case you guys missed my introduction at the beginning, my name's Julie Montgomery. I do work for Councilmember Ellis, and I am listening to everything and taking very comprehensive notes, and I will share all of this with the council member, for sure.
Thank you. So, Mr. Jennings, do you have another comment or question? I see your hand is raised.
Hi, this is Paula Jenigas.
Oh, Paula Jennings. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about like 18-wheelers turning off of Thomas Springs onto Weir Loop. If there's a car parked there to turn onto Thomas Springs, that car is going to have to back up because he won't be able to see to the left or to the right to enter Thomas Springs. The car will have to back up for a truck to turn onto Thomas Springs. I don't know how that would work. And if a big truck is turning off of Weir Loop Road with the traffic on Thomas Springs, there's going to be quite a line if there's people waiting behind them. Anyway, the intersection of Thomas Springs Road and Weir Loop Road is just it's not conducive for big trucks. That's all I have to say.
Okay. And I might have accidentally lowered Peter's hand. If I did, you can go raise it again. But I can go to the Mellish household if they have questions.
Yeah, I just reiterate. I have the driveway end of the road on the right. If any truck that doesn't know where they're going, which happens on occasion, comes down, and we do already have some 18-wheelers that are not supposed to be on the road that comes down, they use my driveway to back up, and they tear up my pavement. So any kind of commercial traffic access, any commercialization of that is really just the road. It's not prepared for it. The neighborhood's not prepared for it.
Thank you. So, Mellish household, do you have any questions, comments? And you can mute yourself. There you go.
I just did.
Oh, that was Eric? Or is that Peter?
That was Eric.
Oh, okay. So, Peter, do you have a... Oh, here's a question from Eric, so I'll lower your hand, but from Justin Mortimer. Do you have a question, Justin?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'd like to clarify one comment about the commercial access. If that's baked into the ordinance and if that's approved as part of this application, would that transfer in any subsequent replatting and subdivision and then that parcel would be, subdivided? Would that same restriction follow with the potential subdivision that may occur later? Or, no, I think that was clear. If it needs any clarification, let me know.
I can answer that, and Alice can too. But if the property is still zoned, whatever the ultimate zoning is, and there is a prohibition, even after it's subdivided, it'd have to get a zoning change in order to take access off that street, as far as I'm aware. Alice, is that your understanding as well?
Yes. However, if the property is subdivided, the plat cannot be approved. It does not have access. So
It would require a zone change at the time of planning.
Yeah, you're correct. It's going to have access. If there's an access prohibition, any restriction has to be lifted by the city council. By someone filing another zoning change and going through this process we're going through right now to be able to remove any restriction that is part of a zoning ordinance.
So in advance of any replatting or subdividing of the property, they would have to get a zone change allowing access to the street in question. So is that your question, Justin?
Yeah, so it requires additional zoning changes. So in essence, it's protected.
Yeah, so once access is denied and it's baked in as an ordinance, that should remain the case kind of indefinitely unless this entire process is broached again. It couldn't just sneak up on the community members.
Correct.
Okay.
So do you have a question or statement, Alice? Your hand's up.
Oh, I just wanted to mention, because no one has that, the county is planning on widening Thomas Springs Road. So that's in the works. It's going to be widened sometime in the future. So I don't know what the timing is on that.
Okay, Peter, would you unmute and ask your question or state your comment?
Yeah, I guess, so in terms of restricting access on Weir Loop Road from the other property, 15. Here's the thing, you know, it seems to a lot of us that you can have restrictions, but I watch 18-wheelers go up and, not 18-wheelers, I'm watching dump trucks go up and down our road, box trucks go up and down Thomas Springs Road. I mean, virtually every day, and they're restricted. You know, the issue is not having a restriction, it's enforcement. But when you call in and ask for enforcement, they'll say, okay, well, we'll get an officer out there, you know, maybe whenever. And you rarely see them. So I don't know as if the Weir Loop section of the property goes commercial, how are we, and they say, oh no, we're not going to let through traffic. Well, I mean, how do you stop that? There is no stop it. You can call the police, you can, I mean, well, actually, you know, for most of us out here, we're you know, you have restrictions from the city of Austin, but we have very few services. You never see a city of Austin policeman out here, maybe Travis County, but it's not something that can be enforced. It really isn't. I mean, you can call every day, but you can't enforce it. You just can't let it happen. You cannot let that property become anything but rural residential and not connected to the other property. If there's no enforcement, I'll suffer the consequences. That's what I'll say on it.
Well,
Peter, I think what I said that any commercial property requires a site plan, and the city staff, when they review a site plan, they go to the zoning ordinance to see if there were any restrictions. If there were restrictions, say no access to Weir Loop Road, the plan will not have a driveway onto Weir Loop Road. That's how it's enforced. It's not like someone opening a business illegally and then someone calls code enforcement and they either show up or don't show up. But getting a plan approved when the ordinance says no, you cannot have that, the city staff is not going to approve it. So that's how that one is enforced.
But Alice, if commercial, what are you going to do with that piece of property? You're not going to have a road through, okay, or you're not going to have buildings on commercial buildings on that property. What's going to happen to that property if you don't have a road that goes through to the other one? What happens? It's 2 acres. It's that valuable property.
It is valuable property. It's indeed. So you, as I indicated earlier, the SOS ordinance and the limitations on the zoning where you can only have 0.25 floor to area ratio limits, your height limits you, so your square footage limits you to concentrating your development. So you end up having 75% of the site as open space.
I mean, you can still have a commercial business there, which means trucks and cars will be coming through.
Not if you don't have a driveway, Peter. Right?
Okay, so the 2 acres is gonna stay vacant, it's gonna be parkland, is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that it's going to be open, it's going to be a parkland until you go through the sidewalk. We're saying we will not have access to that if it's zoned commercial. If it's not zoned commercial, then of course the access will remain.
Zone commercial, what is gonna be there, Alice? I mean, we've asked Brandon this question too, what's actually gonna be there? Something is gonna be there, or else it's gonna be a park.
It could be just open space. We don't have a site plan design. I'm just telling you that the rules.
So you want to approve a commercialization of this without you telling us what's going to happen with Wheeler property. I mean, that's the whole point of this. You guys aren't really presenting us with a plan, just an idea. I mean, and that just doesn't cut it. What happened?
Someone brought up like a Google or Street View. No. So looks like Thomas Springs is to the right where the pickup truck with the trailer, the tractor is, with the water tower in the distance, and Weir Loop goes to the to the left.
Yeah, that was me. I brought up that Google Maps just to show that intersection of where.
Okay. So Cheryl, if you can unmute yourself if you have a comment or question. I know this has been kind of tricky for you. So if you're unable to unmute, I'd like to go to the next person is Justin Mortimer. Would you please unmute and ask your question or make your comment, please?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, yes, I just wanted to, in earlier conversations, I think the topic had been broached that basically the concentration of development would be on the main part of the property, which is the Thomas Springs access road. And I understand there's the 43-foot kind of connection to the Weir Loop 2-acre section. But in earlier conversations, my understanding, and someone can correct me if I am was misunderstanding, but would be to borrow for impervious cover purposes from that 2 acres to concentrate development on the main through road of Thomas Springs Road, basically leaving Weir Loop unimpacted. So I guess if someone could clarify if that wasn't kind of the idea of like if there's no access and why keeping that thing made sense in the reason, because I thought it was to borrow for impervious cover purposes on that front part because of the extremely limiting 25% ratio that the SOS determines.
That's correct.
Okay. So again, just basically seeing this side road that everybody is talking about really should be unaffected. The Thomas Springs side will be the more impacted road, and I know people have expressed concerns about that. I'm not minimizing those, but for the most part, our rural community road of Weir Loop would be pretty protected by ordinances that can be put into place, and once they're there, they stay with that zoning and the property. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Justin, would you like to ask your question or make a comment?
Sorry, that was Justin's wife. I'm Haley, sorry.
Oh.
Thank you.
I think I finally figured out how to unmute.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
Finally. Everybody on this street owns between. What? Everybody on this street owns between maybe 2 to 6 acres, 7 acres, and so What I'm concerned about is if that property becomes commercial, then it opens it up to the future. And I would echo Phyllis Green. What's she going to be looking at? If she lives next door to the 2 acres on Weir Loop, and what's she going to be looking at? And that's all I have to say, other than the fact I object.
Thank you. I'm going to lower your. So does anyone else have any questions? We're scheduled to go for about another 15 minutes, but the meeting doesn't have to extend for the time allotted to it. So does anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to make? Well, we're waiting.
My question remains, what is Phyllis Green going to be looking at her window on? You know, she lives next door to the property on Weir Loop. And so what is she going to be looking at her window at? You know, we don't know what's going to be put on that piece of property. We don't know. And I, you know, what I think it's important for Alice or Mr. Brides to answer what she's going to be looking out her window at.
Who is that speaking?
Cheryl.
Cheryl, in what I know from site plans in the past, where you have limited impervious cover, is that this part that is next to Phyllis will most likely be mostly green, open space. Because of the weird shape of the property, you know, your office restriction that I just read to all of you a little while ago requires that the office building face the main street, which is the Thomas Springs Road, and so your majority of the development would be on the larger property that has frontage on Thomas Springs Road, and hopefully very little, nothing. I'm hoping will be all green, mostly green on the Weir Loop Road. That it will be allowing the development to be concentrated more on the Weir Loop Road, on Thomas Springs Road. So you think of a design that you have your building facing Thomas Springs Road, your office. Then the back, you have to have parking and what have you. So if you're concentrating it here, you're using the other land to allow you to achieve a meaningful development.
Right, but there's a 43-foot easement between the 2 properties. And that's, you know, what's going to be.
We already said that Brandon is agreeing to prohibit any access to Weir Loop Road.
But what's that 43-foot access to between the two properties? And also, you know, what Brand decides to put up on Weir Loop is up to him, I guess.
The restrictions are there. He cannot change the restrictions any more than anyone else. Your height is limited, your area of pavement is limited, your square footage is limited, so you have a lot of land area to build a little something. So
okay. So we have a bunch of hands came up. So let's start with the Mellish household.
Yeah, I just agree. What is this person going to have to look at? I mean, you're asking us, as Peter said, presented us an idea, but no tangibles. This is what restrictions allow. This is what we can do, but you're not telling us what is going to go there. Commercial limited use. It might look like this. We can restrict access on this property, but you're not telling us you're not going to develop, you're not going to put something, you're just telling us you're circling back around to we're just impervious cover, 25% restriction. And that is a huge issue for us. Limited access is a huge issue, but what's going to go there? What are we going to drive by and see? the person going to look out her window and see every day? I mean, those are things that need to be shown to us so we know what we're talking about. I mean, right now we're just talking about an idea and don't really have any tangible to see, except for this is what was allowed and this is what we want to change it to so we can do that, which is the same as this, but not really. So
Eric, did you see the photograph we showed of the a similar office building?
yes, I have. I've been by that building for 20 years, or that property for 20 years, and almost bought it 15 years ago. So I know exactly the piece of property you're talking about, and that's fine. But that means the person on Weir Loop has a good possibility of seeing a warehouse out their window.
But so let me just say this: the order of the process, and I understand your concern that without having the zoning in place, it makes it difficult for someone to go hire an architect and a civil engineer to prepare a plan. So the way the code is structured is that the order is that you get your zoning first, then you go to the site planning process afterwards. So, you know, until you get the zoning, it's sort of the chicken before the egg kind of situation that you're spending time creating.
Well, I think you're trying to satisfy people's interest in a neighborhood. Having an idea and have it architecturally designed are two different things than engineered. You got to have a concept moving forward. I don't believe there's not a concept already sitting there in the gentleman's brain of what he plans to do there. He wouldn't have gone to trying to get a zoning change if he did not already have a solid idea of what he plans to do, not just loosely limited commercial. At least I certainly wouldn't have if I was in that position. And so that's my 2 cents worth.
Well, Brandon is here. Brandon, can you speak to your vision?
Yeah, first of all, thanks everybody for coming tonight, and I appreciate your comments. And just to kind of reiterate the fact that, yeah, I would like to restrict access to Weir Loop. I would like to use that space as a green space to help with the impervious cover, and then put a rectangular building on 7815 Thomas Springs Road. So a rectangular building would not allow anything to be used over there on the Weir Loop section.
In that back
Does that
corner?
help answer? Does that help answer some questions? Yes.
And what kind of drainage issues would that cause? I guess, is that all going to be septic system? Would that have to be? Because there's no city or county facilities that run out there for sewage, is there?
There's not. So it would be some type of, earthen pond, or
does that mean a retention
field,
pond? Is that possibly a retention pond on that property?
That's up to the civil engineer. I can't answer those questions.
A detention pond is required. It's not up to the civil. The city requires a detention pond, a water quality pond because of, a very strict water quality pond because of SOS.
Sure, and that makes me wonder, is that where the retention pond's going to land then?
Well, a detention pond is going to depend on the obviously the grade of the land and where it's going to go. So, and your detention pond is not anything that's going to be or your water quality pond. It's a green area. It's not a paved area. You can see a big pond. So
you can certainly see concrete structures. You can certainly see concrete structures of the retention ponds and the ponds that the runoff go through. It's not like it's green acreage without any type of construction material on it.
Well, the detention ponds and I've seen other places can be handled in a way that they're not
obscene. I understand. Obscene. I'm just saying. I understand. I'm just saying. I mean, they're not like it's just green land. It's just concerns. The person that lives next to that is, what are they going to see? What are they going to have? They're going to have the biggest impact. That's for sure. Another thing is Thomas Springs Road itself is just not set up for any commercial traffic. I know we say it's going to be worked on in the future, but what does that mean? The way we do roads in this town, I've been waiting for the Y in Oak Hill to get done for 25 years. I mean, I'm just kind of calling it as I see it. I'm done.
Okay, thanks. We have about 8 minutes left. We can run a little over because we kind of had some technical difficulties in the middle, but pretty respectful of everyone's time. So we have the Jennings and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Jennings, Paula.
It's Jenigus.
Jennings, okay.
In my opinion, the best solution for the most folks that are involved in this would that tract on Weir Loop Road remain rural residential, period.
Okay. So the next person who has their hand up is Peter. If you have a question or comment.
Yeah, I guess, I think the purpose of this meeting was to, I guess, get our input on just whether this track should be commercial or not. And I think probably we should, I guess, have a show of hands, because that's the main thing. Is this commercial or not? Do we approve? It's not whether we think 7815 should be this or Weir Loop should be that. It's, do we approve this being commercial? Well, I think we ought to show of hands for the record. Secondly, what I want to say directly to Brandon is, you know, there's a lot of us that we're not opposed to development, commercial development. That's happening all over this town. But I think he was premature in coming to this meeting and to our meeting without having a rendering of what he really wants to do. And I think a rendering that we can actually believe in and we can look at and we can evaluate is the way to go about going to a community and asking them if I can, you know, how they feel about changing the zoning and this is what I want to do. He hadn't done that. He's given us an idea. I mean, tonight was the first time I've actually heard a commercial building, a rectangular, well, rectangular commercial building, that can be any number of things. I mean, that's just like, you know, there's no limit to the number of ideas that you, which could also be very big tilt wall concrete stuff. So I'm just saying that I would hope that at the end of this meeting that you would ask for a show of hands. And that I would ask is that Brandon would come back to the community, to our neighborhood, and say, okay, let's work together on this, because I don't think we're opposed to progress. We just want to make sure that it fits in our neighborhood. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay. Julie, I know you had your hand up from Councilmember Page's office. Do you have any questions or comment or anything?
Yeah, thanks. I guess I was just, you know, listening to the neighbors and also sort of having similar thoughts of, you know, I understand here that the SOS restrictions are, you know, they're very strict and they, for good reason, and that sometimes you have to have sort of extra land, if you will, to make sure that you're meeting those impervious cover requirements. And so I guess I was thinking, could Alice or Brandon sort of confirm, like, given that restriction, if anything were ever to try to be built on the Weir Loop portion of that land, you'd probably have to tear down whatever you had built adjacent to Thomas Springs. Probably, right? I mean, as just given the allowable impervious cover is.
Well, Julie, at the time of site plan, if the property were to be, all of it is zoned office warehouse, the next step would be a site plan that would then show all those requirements that would, so that the impervious cover cannot be exceeded, or the city staff will not approve the site plan. So the additional land is there so that you can concentrate development here.
Okay.
And yeah,
I guess it would be, I think it would be helpful to have some sort of, you know, like I think it was Peter who was saying a rendering, or even just sort of some kind of sketch of, like, if given the concept of what y'all would like to develop there, how much impervious cover that would be, so that we could compare that to the 25% that you're allowed, because it may be that just you know, it might be that what you can fit within 25% there next to Thomas Springs Road would be the, you know, the neighborhood would consider acceptable, and that impervious cover would be limited. There would be no more left. So I don't know. I'm just trying to think out loud about how we can all sort of share information to better understand what we're really talking about here, because it seems like that could be helpful.
okay.
Okay, we're running up against the scheduled time that we had. I mean, as I said, we can go a little late because we had some technical difficulties, but if there's no more questions, or while people are thinking about asking one, Maureen, can you go over you know, the next steps and put up your contact information again?
Sure. Let me get to that slide. Okay, can y'all see it? Okay.
Yes.
So if you have any questions after this meeting, you can certainly contact me or Kate. The staff will meet probably next week to make a recommendation. Then we will reach out to the planning contact team and see when we can get their recommendation. We have not scheduled the case for planning commission or city council at this time, but we'll work with the planning contact team to see how that might work for them. And what else do you think? So as far as this video, we will edit out the long portions when we were working out with Alice's presentation, and it should be posted to this exact same website, the speakupaustin.org/MPA, within 5 days.
So early next week.
Yeah.
But next week is a short week for us since it's Thanksgiving week, if I think. So we'll probably be up Monday or Tuesday. By then, at least.
So I understand the planning contact team plans to meet right after this meeting at 7:30. So Mark, I'm not sure how much longer we can go.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So it's 7:31 and there's the other meeting scheduled. So thank you all for sharing your time and coming and asking your questions and making your comments. Really appreciate them. And if you have any additional comments or questions, you can email Maureen or phone her at the number on the screen. And she can get those questions back out, and we'll post those to the Speak Up Austin website within 5 business days. With that, again, thank you for coming, and I guess we'll say good evening.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your input and participation. Thank you, staff.
You're welcome, Alice.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.